Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. It's 1 o'clock. It's a great pleasure to introduce to you Rebecca Griffith, FD of BPI Packaging Solutions. Rebecca has risen through the ranks as management accountant and financial controller, and in 2017 became FD and has 5 FCs reporting into her. So I think it's safe to say she knows a thing or two about reporting, and she's very kindly prepared a presentation today to share with you a common sense approach to reporting. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chris. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. So I thought we'd start off with, Chris has just explained who I am, a little bit more about my background. I studied law at university, thought that was boring, so became an accountant, as you do. I've moved around every 2 to 3 years just to get experience of different roles, different companies and different industries. So it's always been finance roles, like Chris said, finance manager, FC, management accountant, my latest role being an FD. Since 2017. So what we're going to talk through today are really my observations, experiences and pet hates when it comes to reporting. And when we talk about reporting, it's internal reporting. So this is all the business information, the management information that we will see throughout our roles. And it is that level. It's the finance manager, the FC, the management accountants. It's what can we do to add value to that? And what we're going to go through today, it's more about the thought process. So I'm not going to tell you what type of software you should be using or how you should create reports. It's more about these are the questions that you should be asking others and yourself as you're creating reports in order to add value to the wider business. And who is it for? So you're here today. I assume you're either wanting a CPD point or you want to improve on something. So it's absolutely for you guys. And you're not going to learn anything new today. I'm pretty sure of that. So it's really top level, but it's just hopefully thought-provoking and something you can take into your work to help sort of build your own brand. So firstly, why is reporting important? So what is reporting? So I just sort of said what we're looking at here, it's business information, it's management information, it's anything that we will be passing on throughout the business. It can be finance, it can be non-finance, and it's just all these little reports that we touch. They can be in different mediums, they can be spreadsheets, they can be even PowerPoints, they can be cascaded through email or in person. So that's sort of where we're capturing it today. First impressions. So first impressions are so important, reason being because a report will reflect the quality of your work. It represents you. So you want to make sure that if you are passing on a report, that it is that accurate representation. And the value adding, it's what is it saying? Is it guiding the user into what you want them to see? And different types of reporting. So for today, I have really sort of top level split it out between ad hoc reports, so the one-offs that we might do for the business, if somebody wants a new report creating, and also existing reports, so legacy reports that have been there for with the business for years. It's how can we actually improve on things that we can't change sometimes. And we'll go through some examples. So it's really important on the examples that we're looking at more the thought process than exactly what we're showing on the screen. And we will have some question times. So at the end of each section, so at the end of the one-offs, at the end of the new reports and the established reports, there will be time for questions. So please do keep it interactive. Put your questions in as we go along. Even if it's not quite related, sort of do ask it, because that's how we'll learn. It's real life scenarios that we'll learn from. Okay, so ad hoc reporting. What I would recommend is certainly these are the reports where someone comes to you and says, Rebecca, can you give me this information? They're just asking for information. So what we need to find out from that person is, well, what's the intended audience? And this is important because who they are sharing the information with will dictate what level of detail you want to go into. So would they want, for example, a numbers spreadsheet to tell the story? Would they want something more visual with images? The report content, so what they want and why they want it are related. And that's really about interpretation. So what somebody thinks they would like a report on might not be the same interpretation as you, and it might actually not be what they need for the reasons they're wanting it for. So it's really important that you get everything really clear, you know exactly what they want and why they want it. And when do they want it by? So it's really important to manage expectations. If people want something, you know, within the hour and you can't do it, you need to manage their expectations. I can't do it for them, but I can do it for another time. And it's to make sure that, one, you're not time pressured, because the only way you can add value to the wider business and be efficient is that you've got the time to do so. And the added value. So someone's asking for something specific. Well, how can you add value? What questions from what you give them might you predict will be asked? Will it lead on to something else? Could you get a bit more information in there? And often that doesn't come through until you start preparing reports that you see what the information is telling you. And future replication. So quite often in many companies, finance is deemed the reporting department, but how great is it to actually let the other departments report for themselves? You know, they're in control of their own data, they feel empowered, it saves your time where you can add value elsewhere in the business. Okay, so first example. So Jack from the IT department wants to have the numbers of the help desk calls by site for the last quarter, which relate to print queries. So Jack's come to me and that's what he's asked for. So, okay, Jack, who are you going to share the information with? So Jack wants to share it with his boss. What's the content of the report? So as above, this is what Jack wants. He wants some numbers on queries by site. And why do you want it? So Jack actually thinks that there's been a trend coming through that the tickets for printers have been increasing, and he wants to discuss it with his boss because that could be a potential project. For example, if he was looking at new suppliers or maintenance contracts. When would you like it by? Just to make sure that everyone's on the same wavelength. How can you add value? So again, that's as you're creating the report, what trends do you see? Where do you think the questions could lead to? And how quickly can it be replicated? Do we need to help somebody get access to certain software or files? Okay, so this printer tickets, Q3, a list of numbers is what Jack asked for. And remember, we're not thinking about what Jack asked for, it's the thought process. And what I wanted to compare it to is this. So he asked for the table on the left, but what we could give him is the table on the right, or a combination. So the top part being the data table. So within the data table, we've not just got the number of tickets by site for the quarter, we've got relevant quarters so we can compare it to. Well, what will that be in relation to? Is it relation to the head count by site, the number of printers by site? What is going to give us a trend? Then we'll also give them a visual, so that middle graph. Visuals are great because non-finance people can easily interpret them. They can see which direction sort of lines are flowing, for example, and the added value commentary. Spell it out. What is it saying? What do you want the user to take away from the report you've created? So for example here, make a note on the overall trend. break it down slightly. So in this random scenario, we've got 2 of the sites are actually following the trend of decline, and 2 are increasing. So if you're Jack, where are you guided? So based on what his original intentions were, to share with his boss that potentially there's a project to look into some printer problems, that we basically narrowed it down for him that he would need to look at sites 2 and 4 because they're the sites that have got the problem. Has anyone got any questions so far?
There's none come up yet, but it's really interesting the point you make about who's it intended for, because when you brought up the information on the right, looking at numbers, for me, obviously I didn't become an accountant, it doesn't make any sense to me, but when you see it visually in a graph, I could identify exactly where the problems were. So a really interesting point.
It is, and it is a side note. So if one of my FCs was giving me information, give me the detail, that's fine, because I should be able to interpret or know exactly where I should be looking to get the answer. If it's just, for example, a spreadsheet that is quite random, lots of different workings on, well, spell it out to me. Do I need that detail? If I'm asking a question, do I just need the answer? Do I need to see all the workings in the first place? If I'm asking about a trend, definitely show me on a graph. Let's make it easier to interpret, because at the end of the day, what numbers do is they tell a story, and we're just helping the story be told. So whether that is for the reader, the user, to interpret it themselves, or whether it's for us to dictate it to that, and these are all really tools. And you always want to think about, if you were receiving it, what does it tell you? Is it confusing? Is it simple? Is it straightforward? And you really want to make sure that you're guiding the person to exactly what you want to show them. So
I'm looking here to see if any questions are coming up. And I can't see any, but I don't know whether I'm looking in the right place.
Right, I can see one.
Where do you see it?
Oh, no, that's yours. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, no,
sorry.
That's me. I'm presuming there's no questions at this point, so I haven't missed any.
But do, guys, keep it interactive. If you've got any questions, any queries, do just sort of fire them out, so when we get to a point of asking questions, we can run through them.
Sorry, thanks, Laura. Laura's just said no questions from me, thanks. So at least I know I'm looking in the right place. Thank you.
So the next one is new reports. So by new reports, what I mean is that somebody's come to you and they say, I want a new report created. Can you help me to create it? So this is really an opportunity for you to either show your skills, show what you can do, but also learn new skills. So if you want to show something that you're not sure how to, is there somebody within your business that can help you? Is there something online that can help you? And get creative. But always make sure it's fit for purpose. So there is a benefit to you in creating a new report for someone else. And similar set of questions that you'd ask. So who's your intended audience for? Now, how well do they know the subject matter that they want that the report will be on? How much detail do they need? So just going back to that conversation that Chris and I had, if, for example, so Chris works in recruitment, would she want, conversion rates? And how would she want conversion rates? Would she want bar charts that she could interpret, quickly, or would she want a page full of numbers? It's that sort of thing that you'd be thinking about once you know who the audience is for. Again, what is it used and is it relevant? Links in. So asking the question, what is it going to be used for, will help you to define that you've got your perception of what they want, that we're on the same wavelength. Is it relevant? So the beauty about finance is, I like to think we're at the heart of every business. So we do interact with every department of the business. Not other departments can say that. So we would know if there's knock-on effects for what's happening in one department onto another. So is it relevant? If they're wanting to see something, is it going to be relevant to another department? Is it something that could be shared with other departments? Could it be bigger than just the original intended use? And also, is there something already there that could cover the needs, or does it need to be adapted? So what we're trying to do is really be efficient with our time. And it's not all about showing off. I can create everybody a brand new report, whatever they want, but let's be efficient with our time. We're the ones that are adding value in the reporting. So it's about really reporting smarter. And how can we add value? So how can we add value? Similar to before, predict any questions that might come from it. If there's going to be questions from the report you produce, is it already answered? Is it self-evident within there? And how can you produce it more efficiently? So similar to before, can you pass it on to somebody to report so your time is freed up? Do they need access? Do they need software? What tools do they need to make sure they're doing it themselves? Example number 2. So Jill is a customer service manager, and she wants to have a report that she can share with the team on a weekly basis, and it's all about the department's performance. So we'll go through those questions. So Jill's already said she wants to go through with her team. So her team, customer services, sales order processes. If you think these guys will be used to item numbers, details about customers, but are they okay with what their performances look like? Do they know their targets? Do they know what they should be aiming for? Would they like something more visual? Or are we just talking about a bit more detail of what they need? So again, it's asking questions will help you sort of really find out what the needs are and how you can fulfill them and add value to that. So what's it used for? We know that she wants a report on the department's performance. Is it to engage? Is it to benchmark? Is it to punish? And it's really, the more understanding you have about the what, the why, the who, means that you'll be able to deliver sort of on point first time. Again, is it relevant? So, Jill, what are your current department's KPIs? What do we need to track? What is the hot topic at the moment? Where do we need to keep focus on? And how can we add value? So how can we produce something that would let Jill and a team sort of all be together, know exactly where the department's performance is, maybe where it's been, maybe where it's going or targeted? And again, sort of, does Jill need any sort of permissions so she could potentially just refresh a report going forward? So now this one, it's straight. Again, it's not the what, it's more the thought process. So source from zumzum.co.uk. So a dashboard. And if you think, so we've got a service department here. The top half of this dashboard, so you can see the numbers 18, 136K, $138,000. So really simple and effective. So all of her team will know exactly the numbers and the value of orders processed and dispatched. And that will be a key KPI for that department. But we've also got some really good visuals below, so a bit more detail, whether it's sort of customer split, item split, and these boxes can relate to anything that's relevant to that department. And if you've got a team of, it doesn't matter what size, whether it's 3 or 30, something like this is very, very user friendly. Everyone will know exactly where they're up to, and you've potentially got little links that you can click on to get the data, the full detail if required, where the team members might not need that, but Jill as the manager, for example, could. Okay, we've got any questions?
We do. We've got a question from Ashton. He says, nowadays, more reports connected both to commerciality and business partnering. What are your suggestions for combining these two with management accounts or reports?
Well, the next point we'll touch on sort of established management accounts, but for me, it's always about commentary, and we're lucky because if we're producing numbers, we should know what's in them. So from a commerciality point of view, we need to be highlighting, it's not the what, it's the why in linking things together. Sometimes things aren't always clear on the face of, for example, a set of accounts. So you need to make sure it's useful. It's what do you want people to take away from what you're showing, and do we need to add something to it? Do we need to take something away and strip it down? And it's absolutely the two-way dialogue between you and your departments that you are business partnering. What do you want? What do you need? How can we fulfill that by one big report, one standard report that we've already got? Maybe do we need to have any add-ons? Do we need to take anything away? And again, how can we link them? Use what's there already, providing it's useful. And everything's got to be useful. There's no point spending your time in creating something that it might look amazing, but no one's using it. It's that add value. We like I say, we're so lucky that we interact with all the different areas of the business, but we can only do that well if we're adding value. And just ask questions all the time. I think you'd benefit from this. What do you think? Or if you've got a current report, rather than just say, do you use this? What do you use it for? Because again, do you need to refine it? Do you need to add to it? And it's understanding the needs of the people in the businesses that you are partnering will help you to produce or even use what's already there a bit more effectively.
Brilliant. We've got a question from Janet. Do you find that less is more sometimes when reporting data? I feel sometimes I'm reporting on reports that never get used despite being requested.
Absolutely, Janet. It's hard. I think the less being more goes to who your audience is. So real life example, if I've got my FCs reporting into me, accounts, for example, I want to know warts and all. What I will then report out to the business won't be the warts and all. It will be, what do I want them to know, or what do they need to know? And it's one, we do it to maybe so we're not highlighting areas that we don't want highlighting. So if we've got a problem in the business that we know there's been a problem, we've got it under control, nobody else sort of needs to know because that's sorted, it doesn't need to be escalated to a higher level, then we wouldn't mention anything about that, for example. But also it can be the other way. So we could have a report that might on the face of it look as if it says nothing, but within that we could have some ups and downs, and if you look individually at those ups and downs, they might be important. So we might then want to sort of add a bit of commentary and say exactly what has gone on behind those numbers, because it might add value to the business or to the wider business and impact other departments.
I'll take the questions. I was just going to say, I think the points that you've made about, all the questions that you ask when somebody comes to you from the business and says, we need a report for this, this, and this, it's really important, isn't it? Because that helps flush out where reports are being generated for the sake of it, where they're not being used, or they may not be for, coming up, given the information that they're intended for. So I think that upfront questioning is probably really important, isn't it?
It really is. And it's, first of all, none of us are perfect. I don't always practice what I preach. I should, we're all in a rush, we're all multitasking, but there's nothing worse than spending time on something that is not used. It's an absolute waste of your time. So I have gone out on a reply all, who uses this report and what do you use it for? And if you've got a distribution list of a dozen people and one person comes back saying, yes, I use it, well, what do you use it for? Because if this report takes me 2 hours to create, and that's just on a refresh because of the amount of data in there, I'm pretty sure that we could get a fix for your needs that will be a lot more efficient than me sitting there waiting for a spreadsheet to update, for example. And and I think at the level of finance managers and FCs, I certainly found it's quite daunting, because often you're producing reports for directors, for heads of departments, but it's so key to get this interaction and this communication there, and it's drilled down. The more information you have, the better produce from your own work you'll get. And therefore, for those of you that are wanting to progress, absolutely sets you off in the right direction. Okay. So moving on to established reports. So like, for example, your management accounts pack, your Monday reporting packs, things that are legacy to your businesses, things that have always been there and will always be there. How can you add value to something that's already existing? And quite often, let's face it, they're not very user friendly. They're hard to read. But there are lots of different ways we can do it. And the first thing I'd like to point out is always ask the question first. If you have a legacy report that you think, actually, I can show the same information and it would be interpreted a lot better if we just presented it in a different way, always ask the question, can I make changes, or I propose that we do this? Because it's not necessarily always going to be no, this is what we've got to use. Quite often you'll find that if it's, for example, a department report, that it's standard because then we've got consolidation through the different departments or different sites. So things like that we can't. So if we can't make any changes, how can we add value? And there are, little tips. So, for example, do we need to highlight certain boxes to draw attention to people? Can we add some commentary, which is my absolute favourite? But also, if we look at accuracy, we're talking about sort of reports we've inherited, from others, from predecessors. How do we know it's accurate? Have you tested the data yourself? Is it something that's been passed on? Because it's, you never take someone else's numbers. You always need to double check it yourself and do a sense check, because it goes back to these first impressions. An example on management accounts, if a new general ledger code has been added, has that been captured into the chart of accounts? Because there could be one time when actually it's material and you think that a total for a part of the ledger is one value, but it could be material out because it's not included. So always think that whatever we are producing, whether we've inherited it or something we've created ourselves, we need to make sure and justify that it is accurate. And then on the commentary, we've got all these confusing black and white reports that we have to use for the business. It's how do we add value? Well, quite simply, it's, add a commentary. So if we can't add it directly to the report, add it to the distribution on the report. So, for example, if you're emailing something out, put a blurb in the body of the text. What do you want people to get from it? And going back to the original example, it's, if I sat down with Chris and went through a set of management accounts, I'm not going to show her the P&L because Chris will be confused.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly. I could even point at numbers. So you think again about your audience. So if you're going out to senior management team, they're probably used to management accounts. If you're going out to middle management team, how do you make it easier for them to interpret it? Do they need something else? Do they need something like a variance analysis to go with it? So these are always the things that you should be thinking. Just don't take it for granted that something is set in stone. You can always make something better. Nothing's ever going to be a 10 out of 10. You always need to be striving for small improvements, small tweaks. It can always be sort of better, whether you're saving on efficiency, whether the presentation looks better. Just adding some titles can help sometimes so people know exactly where to look for certain sections. But again, it's always look at something with fresh eyes. What is it telling me? A tip that I'll always use, if I've got an important report, for example, that I'm presenting, I'll pass it to my husband. He doesn't work he doesn't work in industry. I'll say, what does that tell you? And if he doesn't get it straight away, then I've done something wrong on how I've presented that. You know, even sometimes I'll quite often say to my guys, you know, have a conversation with your daughter, your son, what do they think? And it's the same sort of thing. If they don't get it straight away, what you're trying to portray, then something's been missed in the communication. So yes, you can keep things as simple as possible, or you could have something that's really detailed, but you need to know where the focus should be and make sure that that's how the user interprets it as well. So if we have a look at an example, now here's an example P&L. It's a P&L, it's a third quarter of a P&L, probably about a ninth of a P&L pack that I use in my business. So first of all, it's a very old one. No one will identify what it's for, where it's for, who it's for. But the point is, this is a set of numbers. And if you imagine we've got a few more columns to the right and we can have a few more columns to the left for year to date, it's just a big page of numbers that are so confusing. It's one you'd need to get your ruler out so you could follow the lines through. And for non-finance people, you're just going to confuse them. It's a proper bamboozle. So how can we, with this set of management accounts that I can't change because I'm part of a group, and all of my sites will consolidate up into one, which is why everything is a set format. How can I add value to my business, to my site leaders and to their teams? So strip it down. So we'll strip down the sales. What do I want to show about the sales? What do I want to show about the cost of sales? Overheads, for example. And then we'll give them some commentary. So we'll still be distributing the same reports because that's what we do as a business. I've got a standard practice there, but we can also distribute an extra page with some commentary and highlight these are the key things that you need to know is what's happened in the month, in the quarter, in the year. So commentary. How do we give an effective commentary? So you want your observation, you want the detail of that observation and the specifics to it. So for example, in this example, sales volume was ahead of the prior year. Well, that's great. But what are you going to do with that information, or what is the commercial team going to do with that information? So we'll add a bit more. Sales volume was ahead of prior year by 7%. Well, that's pretty good growth, you know, well done, commercial team. Well, hang on a minute. It's ahead by 7% because we've got a new customer, or we've had a change in mix from another customer. And that is where the added value comes in. You've got the what, but the why. You need to understand the why, because then what we can do, if it was the other way, for example, sales volume is down against last year by 7%, and it's because there's one customer we can pick out, or there's two, or there's three, that they are trending under last year. Well, commercial team, what can we do about that? You're going to have a look at that. Why is it? Have we lost part of the contract? Is it a timing issue? Has our service not been great? You know, and it's all about adding that value and feeding on to the people that with information that they can actively use to, again, they can then add value within their own department. And an example of something that where, you know, there might look that there's nothing to report on. So sorry, I just need to read my notes on this because Chris's head is hiding. So we've got here, so labour remains consistent with prior year, but we know that there's ups and downs within that, and these ups and downs are important because we could have had, for example, a change in business strategy, work could have shifted between different departments, and so I'm putting a note on that because the people that are reading this, it is of use and it is of value to them, and that could also be a discussion point. So we can also put points on there that could be like a prod. If we want to highlight, and if we think actually, no, there's an issue here, we should be raising that, because sometimes it can't always be interpreted by the numbers, certainly by non-finance people. And then the added value, so if you're going through management accounts, for example, with someone in marketing or something a bit more creative, a non-number orientated department, maybe give them the visuals. So this little waterfall below, it's actually doing the variance from the budget to the actual on the numbers to the left. And straight away, that first red column, that's where the issue is. And then you can, again, support your commentary against that red number, drill down on it, and you would know that you would want to give more information on that because of its weighting compared to those two little, the red and green further down where we've got smaller variances and they're immaterial. So it's always think about what you're giving, how it's going to be interpreted, and how you can add value. Okay, so before we go on to the last questions, I just wanted to give you a quick summary. So questions are key. I think if I've got anything across, it's ask lots of questions. Don't be scared if the people more senior than you, because you only know what you know. So don't always assume, don't make assumptions, always ask and get the details, because that's going to be key to the work that you are passing on, to the information you're providing to the wider business. And again, that will link into the first impressions. You want to make a good impression, and you don't want to do something more than once. There's, often we'll do a report and there may be tweaks, actually add this in, take this away, and yeah, this is it. But you don't want to have to create something from scratch, sort of more than once. So that's why it's so important to ask questions. And also, sort of do get the feedback, just jump into the end on that, get the feedback if you've given a report. What do you think? What do you use it for? And then go back, diarise it, ask them in a month, ask them in a quarter, ask them in a year. Are you still using that report that I got you for? Oh, no, it doesn't meet needs. Okay, well, let's see how we can, update it so it's relevant for today. Whereas it may have been relevant last year, but let's get it up to date and so it's usable. And it's all about providing the right information to the right person in the right format, because everyone plays their own part in taking the business forward. And this is just one way how we play our part in something that's day-to-day, it's inherent reporting, but we really can add value and help other people add value. And then self-review, we've all been there, done a report, sent it off, need to recall the email because we've missed something vital or we've just spotted a mistake. So always take your time. It's really, important. I make myself do it now. It's you finished a report or you've written up your commentary, you're about to press send. Well, actually, go and get yourself a drink, do a couple of emails, distract yourself, come back to it fresh, read through. Is this exactly what you want to be sending? Again, you don't want to have any regrets or any thoughts, oh, I could have done that better, or I could have explained that better, or I forgot to say about this, especially if these are material parts of the report that you're passing on. And again, check it twice. I can't portray how important it is to make sure what you're passing on is 100%. We're relied on to make sure the information is correct. It's assumed that we pass on correct information, so always make sure that it is accurate, that if you're saying one thing in a commentary and there's a graph, make sure they tie up, make sure they tally up and that they correlate. Again, ask for feedback upwards, downwards, sideways, and don't be afraid to always sort of go back and say, right, how can we improve this? What else do you need? Because it's going back to the start, you're building your own brand, you're getting a reputation for actually you're a good tool, that you are providing value to the business. And that's what reporting is about, is providing value to people that need it. So ask for feedback, is it still used? Is it relevant? Could it be done better? And also, get involved in these two-way conversations. Okay, so we've got any questions, please?
We've got a question from Lisa Muir. How would you deal with pushback on changing established reporting, as people like what they know and don't always embrace the change and the added value they would get?
Right, Lisa's one of mine. Hi, Lisa. So Lisa's one of my FCs. So absolutely great question. Certainly when, we work in quite an old-fashioned industry of manufacturing, people like what they have because they've always had it. Sometimes it is hard to get buy-in, sometimes it's difficult, but then it goes down to communication. If somebody has something one way, what I'd recommend, Lisa, is if you think there's a better way, an easier way to do it, try it, because sometimes until people have got, 2 reports that maybe show the same, until they've got them that they can compare and actually say, yes, you're right, this one actually has what I need and more, then you're not going to get the buy-in. But certainly lead by example. Always push back if somebody thinks that something is relevant to them and you can't see that connection. Again, ask, well, why do you need that on the report? Why do you need that number? What do you use it for? People will be getting reports, I think we touched on before, just because they've always had reports, but what are they using them? If they're not using them for anything, it's worthless. And surely, I assume everyone wants to add value in what they do, but it's don't be afraid to push back. Don't be afraid to actually think, I'm going to run with this. I'm going to sort of mock something up and then have another further conversation. And sometimes it's not always the what, but the how we go about things. So always remain open, always listen, but always be prepared to push back. I think as a finance, we're very often the yes person. Yes, I can do that, and yes, I will do that. Well, actually, if there's no value in us doing it for the wider business, why are we doing it? So that's it. Just stand your ground, but also lead by example.
Yeah, there's no further questions just now, unless anyone is thinking of any. But I was just going to say, I think that's where the business partnering comes in, doesn't it? Because if you develop that relationship with the business, and I guess sometimes people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what data is available. So it's up to you as finance to kind of guide them and say, well, we can provide you with this information or with that detail, and helping them arrive at what it is they need potentially.
You're absolutely right, Chris. And often if, you have got, say, certain people that are quite set in the ways and they know what they like, they're used to what they normally get. And that's why until sometimes speaking to them and pushing back and trying to engage them, it will just land on deaf ears because they just want what they've always had. So that's why it will come into, actually, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm not just saying it, this is what I mean. There are several ways to slay a dragon.
Brilliant. No more questions at this point, unless any come up.
Brilliant. So the only thing then I'd like to just pass on is reporting is a thought process. And just think about the questions. Then before you send, or before you send off the finished article or whatever you want to do, is it what you want to be passing on? Does it give the full story? Are you going to get questions back that actually, by adding something in or taking something away, you could field those questions?
Rebecca, thanks so much for taking the time out to prepare for this and taking time out of your day to deliver it. I think it's been amazing, really insightful for me, obviously non-finance person, and hopefully, it's given other people some food for thought. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Chris. And I hope it is just food for thought. It's nothing new. It's not a lecture on how to do something. It's more, have you thought about? So I hope people take that away.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Take care. Bye.